well, what I want to be is the fun one. So I want to be like, oh, I'm with grandpa. It's going to be fun. It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be a blast. And I want to be that additional voice that says things that maybe when their parents say it, it goes one in one ear and out the other. Oh, but grandpa said it. Okay, maybe it's true.
My friend, you are so important. You don't hear it enough, but being a father is critical. Our world is in desperate need for men like you who are leaning in to what it means to be a father and waking up every day, putting your feet on the ground, showing up for those that have been placed in your care. 3 nuggets from my conversation with my good friend David Bonnet today are: 1, the 6 words that you must tell your kids if they play sports, and these are the only 6 words you should be telling them. Number 2 is, after hundreds of podcasts, really, truly a golden nugget of what the role of the father is. And number 3, why letting your kids deal with natural consequences is so important to their life. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for both you and I to grow in our own craft of fatherhood. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yeah, I'm in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, steward, provide, and protect. And of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend David Bonnet, and we had an incredible conversation around what it means to be a father, a stepfather, and how to step into that role daily, fighting for what matters in your role, loving and serving your kids. David Bonnet, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes, my friend. It is so good to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, man. Okay, so how old do you find yourself today?
48.
48 years young. How do you feel at 48?
I feel so much better than I did in my 30s.
And why is that?
Actually, just physical health is better.
Yeah, you've leaned into that. I mean, you and I know each other pretty well, and you've leaned into the physical fitness component the last few years. What was the motivating driver of that?
Well, I came face to face with it about 15 months ago. I went through a 3-day experience with Rise Up Kings and kind of dealt with the fact that I was not in nearly as good a shape as I thought. My 4-mile walk every day was not cutting it. And so I'd gained a lot of weight. And so anyway, that just got serious about it and got serious about the issues in my own heart that led to that. And then started a journey of becoming more fit.
Love it, man. Love it. How many years you been married?
3.5 years, a little more.
And then how many kiddos do you have?
So we have 5 between us. Yeah.
And what are the ages of those kids?
They are 24, 23, 23, and 21.
Oh, that's awesome. So in the midst of having this like young adults, right? So I just dropped off my first kid at college last week. I think a lot of dads who are listening to this most likely are kind of like middle school, high school age kids. So in seeing just beyond the high school years and into like, kind of college is over, careers are starting. I know there's some blending of family, but what are some things that you would say are important for the father to be aware of?
Yeah. So the challenges change that kids go through. The whole goal, my whole goal of a father to adult children is to earn the title or the role of trusted advisor.
That's
Because
good.
I can't make decisions for them any
Yeah.
longer. So even when they make bad decisions, I can say, how can I help? What can I do for you? So it's very different from when you're trying to balance the teenage years. You're trying to balance helping them grow up and exerting a certain amount of control and guidance. It just completely changes once they're out of the house. And especially when they're off the dole, as I like to say, when they're no longer dependent financially. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so funny you bring up just how the seasons change, right? It's like same things, but seasons change. I was just on the phone with one of our friends, Will Stratman, and his kids are the little kids. So his kids are yelling in the background and he's trying to get them to pick up some cards, like Pokemon cards, and it's like you could just hear the chaos. And he's like, oh, yeah, you hear this. You're probably, happy you're past the stage. And I'm like, well, last night I implemented new things in my home and I had one daughter cry and I had another son leave the room and go to his bedroom for him to cool off. And so you're like, it's the same things. It's just you have a different level of not authority. Because I love, you still have authority because you're earning that, but that it has to be earned for them to listen, right? It's funny
Mm-hmm.
because my son, I'm like, this kid just could tell me to screw off. He doesn't, but he could. He just doesn't quite. It's not that he doesn't know it. There's just still some reason why he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's because we have a good relationship and stuff. But anyways, all right. Where do you guys live? Where do you guys do life?
Yeah. So we live in outside of Dallas, a suburb of Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
And you've been there a long time?
Yeah. So the Dallas-Fort Worth area has been my home base for about 16 years, except for 2 years when I lived in Africa.
Cool. And then I love and hate this question, but I think it helps us to relate. But what is it that you do for a living to provide value out in the world and feed the family?
Yeah. So I am a staff pastor with Rise Up Kings, which is a Christian men's personal development organization. Yeah. So I facilitate the faith pillar for Rise Up Kings.
And then you've been a pastor for much of your life, most of your life, all of your
Yeah.
life?
I ordained about 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So most of that in church ministry and missions. But then a few years that I was in a Christian business. Yeah.
Cool. Love it. All right. And I asked the question because it doesn't matter if you're the staff pastor or you sell insurance or you run Costco. You have a 16-year-old, you have a 23-year-old, you have a kid having a baby, getting married, graduating high school. We all have these same milestone moments. And so although we might come from different backgrounds, we're still having to navigate these things. And as fathers, like a lot of these moments are first time, like I took my daughter to college. I'm like, this is the first time I've ever done this. So I'm doing what I think is the right way to do this. In your opinion, what is the role of the father?
So if I can cheat and give two answers, the most important thing is to facilitate our children experiencing God in such a way that they want to do life the Jesus way the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
The second most important thing is that they are prepared for the challenges and trials of life, that they have a resilience and a grit and a skill set and an education, that they have everything they need to be able to do life as adults.
So can you give me two examples? So if you have example one, you want to have them be connected the Jesus way. What's an example that you would, or that you did do that? And then same with preparing them. So example on both ends. And it could be from any kind of like age or philosophy for them growing up.
Sure. So I have 3 kids that I met when they were already adults, and I have 2 kids that I've known their whole lives. So the 2 kids that I've known their whole lives, the way I focused on that was I would pray with them each night before bed when they were toddlers. And it started out with them repeating after me. And then I was like, I think the words you said were what I said. I didn't completely understand. So really they were praying with quotation marks before they could really speak clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I did is I first encountered the gospel through the Chronicles of Narnia when I was in elementary school. And so I would read them a chapter of the Chronicles of Narnia every night, with as much character voice and drama and silliness as I could, as a way to point them in the direction of Jesus through the characters and the narrative in those books.
Man, I wonder if that's somewhat of a lost opportunity or lost art. Like my daughter and I, my youngest, right? She's 11, so she's still down for us to read together. And so we're reading the Divergent series together. But my parents read me Chronicles of Narnia. I remember my dad sitting in our doorway reading it to it, which is funny because he's not a believer. So I'm not sure why he chose to read that to us. But what a great opportunity and way for you to connect with your kids. So that was a way that you taught them the gospel, the Jesus way. And then what about preparing them? So as you think about your kids in these stages, hindsight's 2020, what do you think you taught them well? And then what are you like, man, I wish I would have leaned into this a little bit more?
Yeah. So basically my policy was, I will encourage you, coach you, support you, but I'm not going to fight your battles for you. Your relationship with your teacher is your responsibility. And if you didn't do your homework, I'll rescue you once or twice a semester, or I'll bring your homework to you that you forgot. But other than that, you're going to live in the consequences of your actions. I felt the most important thing for them to learn was that there are consequences for their actions, and there's absolute love and forgiveness when they mess up.
Yes.
Which is a tough tightrope sometimes, but that's what I was shooting for.
What are your thoughts on this? I think my wife and I have leaned into a little bit more that there are natural consequences to your actions, such as you forgot your homework. I didn't bring it to you this time. You got in trouble at school, and letting them sit in that and not just layering on, and by the way, you're grounded for a week. We've kind of not done the, by the way, you're also grounded for a week, because we want the emphasis to be on them dealing with their consequence of like natural causes. What do you think about that? And here's why I'll say it. I think sometimes I used to think I had to be mad, right? For them to understand they made a poor choice. I needed to be mad so they saw like, I messed up. But I just think that just made the situation worse. What do you think?
Yeah. At my worst moments, I would get mad. At my best moments, I would offer empathy. Man, I'm so sorry that happened, that you forgot your homework and now you're having to deal with the bad grade. Man, I hate that for you. And it stinks that that's the result of those actions or failure to act.
I love it, because I think that I just sort of had a bit of an aha in the past couple months. One of my kids made a poor choice. And this shift from I'm disappointed in you for doing this, versus I'm really disappointed in the action you took for you. Right? So it's a big difference. And I think I finally really made that distinction between the two, that I'm not disappointed in you. Like, you are not a bad person. You just made a stupid choice. And that's where I think the empathy part that you bring up is really important, is I feel it for and with you, but I'm not necessarily solving the problem either.
Yes.
I wanted to unpack this for a minute. So I send the questionnaire to you, so you kind of know some of the questions that are coming at you. And when I brought up the opinion of the father, the role of the father, you made comment about talk about God as in relating to a father. So you are a father, and then you talk to your kids about God as a father, right? So in our culture, I think sometimes it's hard for us men to really have that view of God as a good father, because maybe we didn't have a good father, and maybe we don't really know, man, I'm really trying to be a good father. How do you communicate that well to your kids, that you might not meet all your kids' needs as a human father versus a perfect father?
Yeah. So I think about the the responsibilities of a father to protect, to provide. God protects us, but he doesn't protect us from everything. So I'm not going to protect you from everything. I'm going to let you live into some consequences, and you got to be smart and street smart and watch your back. Okay. And I'm going to provide your needs, your wants. We're going to do that together. Right. So lots of times with my kids, they would say, well, I want to go on this trip to New York with school. And I'd be like, okay, I will pay for half. Now help me help you get your half. Right. Even though I had the ability to pay for all of it.
That's good.
That they needed to participate in it to have the effort. And then it makes them enjoy it more because they made sacrifices. I would also tell them all the time, you can have anything you want. You just can't have everything you want. So when it comes to money, so if you want to go on this trip to New York, what are you going to do without? Because you can have anything you want if that's what's most important. And then it's all about, for me, it was about showing them love that wasn't dependent on their actions. And sometimes I did that really badly, and sometimes I did it really well. And I was just talking to two of them this week about that. I said, tell me stories of when I did it badly, and tell me stories of when I did it. Yeah.
What did you hear like that you want to share?
Yeah, well, some hard ones and some good ones. So my one son, he shared that the most impactful experience that he had, he was 16 years old, and he was afraid that he had gotten a girl pregnant. She told him that she might be pregnant, and he was concerned, and he came to me with that.
Wow.
And the way he remembers it, I offered love and compassion, and we will do whatever it takes to sort through this. And he didn't experience any judgment in that moment. And I don't remember the conversation distinctly. I remember how I felt. And I remember thinking, this is a very important moment of how he's going to see God in how I show up here. And so the parts of me that I'm feeling and I want to say, I can't say if they don't represent the heart of God.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just think of these moments that dads have. So to pause and realize that this moment is not just about this moment, but the way that I react, respond, engage is going to paint a picture for who God is. Like, that's taking your role as a father to pretty freaking high responsibility as a man. Now, would you say in that moment that you felt, I mean, it's just a stupid question maybe, but like that maybe you wanted to respond differently, like you're disappointed, you're frustrated in this, but you refrained because of the greater calling on your life to point him to God?
Totally. Yeah, I wanted to tell him, like, dude, we've told you your whole life that sex is for marriage, or whatever, or make it about me. Like, how could you do this to me when I've given you all the love and support you ever needed, and make it about myself and my own experience. Like I was thinking about all of those things because I was feeling all of those things.
Yes. Yeah. Interesting. So I think if we can take ourselves out of the situation, right? I so much of the time, because we're selfish people. I mean, I'm thinking about myself and what I'm going to eat and what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do, right? I'm thinking about myself all the time. So to take yourself out of that and not make the moment about you, super powerful. Pretty freaking cool that when you ask him this question, like that's a moment that he recalls.
Yeah, 8 years ago. The other one that I thought he was going to say, and I did ask him about it, is I said, "Hey, do you remember that time when you we were texting and I put in quotation marks, ran away after rebelling?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely, I remember that." And so what happened is I don't know what was going on with him exactly, but I said, "Hey, I need you to do this," and he said, "No, I'm not going to." And he was in the other room, and that was just, I think he was probably 17 at the time.
Okay.
And I was just like that just doesn't fit in the culture of my family. Kids don't speak to parents that way in our particular culture. And I walked into his room and I said as calmly as I could, I think I must have misunderstood you. I need you to do this. And he said, I'm not going to. And I said, this is not a negotiation.
Mm.
And he said, well, then I'm leaving. And he packed a little backpack, didn't put any shoes on, and he walked out the door.
Mm.
And I thought, and I thought again, how do I paint a picture of God here?
Man, that's so
and
good.
I walked out the door with him, and we just started walking down the street in silence. And we walked probably half a mile. And he said, you going to walk with me forever? And I said, yes, I am.
Wow.
So we turned around and we walked back home. He said, my feet are cold. He put some shoes on. And then we walked the other direction, like a mile. And he stopped. And I stopped. And then he told me everything that was going on with him. And so I said, what I was trying to communicate to you is that even when, is I was trying to represent God to you, that even when God is unwanted, unwelcome, and silent, he's still with you. He still loves you. And he's like, yep, that motivation came through.
Wow.
That you were trying to do that. Yeah. And by the way, like this makes me sound like a great father. Most of my mistakes were with my other son, who is a lot less like me. He just, personalities are just night and day. I can show you on all the personality profiles how we're the opposite. And he needed a lot more compassion and understanding that I didn't offer well. And so he does tell stories about, I said, so what was the biggest thing for you? And he said, when I had to spend 6 weeks doing a personal fitness program for Boy Scouts. And I said, okay. He said, it brought out the worst and best in you.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, tell me about that. And he said, yeah, I hated running. And because you were running, you made me run, even though that wasn't required in the program necessarily. And you would like, it was never okay to just not to skip one day at the gym. And I felt like my success was more important than my feelings.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, I accept all of that. Like, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. And he's like, also, how many parents would wake themselves up an hour and a half earlier than they have to just to take their kid to the gym to help them accomplish something they want to accomplish?
So that was the positive side to what he said.
Yeah.
It's so tough. So this is somewhat comical. Okay. So I have 4 daughters and a son. And one daughter just moved out, school starting up. I feel like the last couple of years we've lost some of our sense of rhythm in micro. Okay. So school's starting and I'm going to do a devotion with the kids. And so I'm like 7:10. I want you to be done with your stuff by 7:10 a.m. We're going to do a 10-minute devotion before you leave. And my 15-year-old son is like not into it. He's like, this feels like summer camp. You want me up at set, I got to get up 15 or 20 minutes earlier because of this. And so it's that dance of feelings and success. So your son said you cared more about my success than my feelings in a sense. And it's hard because I look at my son, I'm like, you're 15. I got 3 years to make a man out of you in a sense. Like I'm not that aggressive about it. You know what I mean? But it's a tight balance. But what was cool is my 16-year-old had started crying at one point, which is very rare. And it was actually because there was some other things going on, which she opened up to me about when everyone left the room, which was like beautiful. I journaled about it this morning. It was so wonderful that she would share with me. But she started telling my son, dude, dad's asking for 10 or 15 minutes. I've got friends that boom, 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 and boom. They have zero freedom. Like he's not requiring a lot. So anyways, just relating with you. Any other thoughts that come to mind while I was giving you a minute to breathe?
Yeah, I think there in late adolescence, there comes a point where I tried to shift towards being a friend. Right. So all along I've been, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And then it's time to be a friend. And so, one summer, 5 years ago, I thought, this is the only summer where they're going to have a fair degree of flexibility. Okay. So the next summer, the oldest is probably going to have a chance at an internship. Summer school is not that advantageous and they can't make that much money. So let's take a trip. So we took remember, pastor here. Okay. 5-week trip to Europe.
Wow.
With the three of us, like 7 or 8 different countries. And so we went on a pub crawl, like our first week.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, they would bring people up to me and they're like, "Are you really their dad? Oh my gosh, you're a legend. My dad would never do something like this with me." And they just felt so proud that their dad was cool enough to take them on a pub crawl. My thought was, I'd rather you go on a pub crawl with me. There's some boundaries and some constraints.
Yeah.
But we got to have a lot of great conversations just on buses and in hotel rooms and at pubs.
Let me ask you this. Did you grow up that alcohol was bad and that your parents would never have done that with you?
No, actually my parents had a pretty healthy relationship with alcohol. My mom just wasn't interested in it. And my dad had grown up Roman Catholic. Okay. And they would have a bottle of wine 4 or 5 times a year. Okay. And they would get through a bottle of brandy once every 14 or 15 years. So it wasn't a big part of it. Rare. Yeah. Say again?
It wasn't a big part of life.
It wasn't a big part of life. Yeah. No. Yeah. And also when I got into high school, I remember one time I told my dad that I'd gotten really, really drunk at a party. And it was really dumb. And I was really like, it's like God's blessing that I didn't get alcohol poisoning. Like, it was really bad. And he was just so chill about it. He was like, "Yeah, so how did that feel?" And I was like, "I felt out of control. I didn't like it." He's like, "Yeah. So you going to do that again?" I was like, "No, I don't want to." He was like, "Cool."
Wow. Okay.
But I was 18 and I was about to go to college. So he was operating in that, hey, you're about to make your own decisions and helping me process it rather than trying to tell me what to do when I was 18.
I dig it. Well, since we're on the topic of your dad, I like to ask, and you can answer both or answer neither. Okay. What's something that you appreciated about your dad? And then what's something you wish he would have done differently?
Yeah. So my dad, wow, I have a lot of things I really appreciated about him. Every day he got up and he went into the living room and he read the Bible and he prayed out loud on his knees. Wow. Every day I can remember. Wow. And then he dragged himself to work every day. And he mowed grass for a living. He owned his own business, so he was able to support 4 kids, barely. But there was just this, he never told me this is what men do. He fathered me into this is what men do. We provide for our families, no matter how cold, hot, miserable, how we feel ashamed of it. Because as he grew older, he had a lot of shame and self-worth issues where he looked down on himself for being a guy who mows grass for a living, which eventually led to him going and becoming a counselor, which is something that I wish he hadn't done, actually.
Interesting.
Because he spent his prime earning years racking up student loan debt and not working, which ultimately led our family from sort of this lower middle class to now in their later years, they're barely eking out a living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I wish he would have done, believed in himself more. Yeah. I would say things like, "Hey, Dad, why don't you try to expand and get more clients and maybe get a couple more trucks?" And he's like, no, like we can pay all our bills like this. He just had a mindset, a thermostat that was, man, if I can make, in today's money, $125,000, $130,000 a year, I can provide for my family. Why would I want to expand from that?
Yeah. Man, that's so good. I think you're 48, right? And so when asked the question, what you wish your dad would have done differently, it's wild that like 48 it's like something still comes to mind fairly quickly. Like you weren't prompted on that question. And I like to ask it because someday your kids or my kids are going to be asked the same question, or they could be. And what are they going to say? And the idea of, I wish my dad believed in himself. It's like, dudes listening right now, like you're most likely listening to this because you're trying to grow as a father. And so to step into that, man, one, believe in myself, like I matter. And so I'm going to invest in myself, which you're doing right now by listening to this. And then to take away the role of the father. I mean, David, I've done almost 450 podcasts. And if we could all just look at our role as I need to paint a picture of who God is to my kids, like that's the role of fatherhood. I just think it's so powerful. Sounds like you had a really good dad. And so did you always want to be a dad? When you found out you were going to be a dad, were you excited? Or when did you embrace fatherhood where you're like, yes, this matters?
Yeah, I think I always wanted to be a dad. Yeah, I think so. And I just all kind of imagined. So one thing that kind of shaped that is my dad, his dad was sort of, he showed up, he was home every night, but he wasn't very involved.
Mm.
And so my dad, when he was in his 20s, I was born when he was like 22, he would read books about how to be a better father.
Mm. Wild. That's so awesome, dude. Even like 48 years ago, he's reading books. Man, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. And I remember one time he said, "Hey, let's go to the store. I want us to buy fishing gear." And so we went and we bought all this fishing gear and we would go fishing. And it was years later, I was like, man, Dad, I really appreciated that you wanted to go fishing with me. I don't really like fishing, but I really appreciated that we did something together. And he said, I don't like fishing either. Okay. He was doing it just to spend time with me, and I was doing it just to spend time with him. Neither of us particularly liked fishing. For me, there's not enough accomplishment in it. It's too much waiting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for him, it's kind of messy and stinky. So it wasn't really our jam, but we just wanted that time together. And so I remember those conversations. Actually, the best conversations were when I worked with him. When I mowed more grass by the time I was 15 than most people do in a lifetime. And so we would talk about stuff all the time. And that's really when he really influenced me the most. So I was always looking for opportunities to work with my kids because that's when my dad really fathered me.
Wow.
Like when he ran over a light, like he did mostly commercial, but the residential stuff, it was all very high end, very expensive homes and gated communities and all that. And he ran over this light. And he was like, "Oh my God!" Like a one of the lights that light up the driveway.
Yeah, totally.
Just outside the driveway. And I immediately got anxious about how much this was going to cost. And I was like, he's like, "Oh, we're gonna have to pay for that light." And I was like, "Dad, like, there's so many people coming in and out of this estate all the time, pool people and housekeepers and all this stuff. Like it could be anybody. They won't know that it's you." And he looked me dead in the face and he said, "But I know it's me. It's my responsibility." And so even in this time of financial anxiety, we're going to do the right thing. So that was really, really, I've posted about that experience on Facebook about how there were these key moments where he shaped my values around right and wrong.
You saw his character, and you only really, you can see character in doing something fun together like fishing. But in a work environment, there's going to be more variables, right? This is your work, so your character is going to show up. I love that you shared it because I think in our day and age, and maybe I'm just speaking to myself, but I think we're constantly looking for the fun thing to do with our kid, right? Like, let me get my work done so I can take you skateboarding or whatever. And I'll tell you, I was recently challenged. I'm reading a book again, and it's talking about like doing chores around your house. I typically dread that crap. Like, I don't want to change light bulbs and whatever. I'd almost rather just pay somebody to do it. But there were some chores to be done around the house recently, and I was reading the book at the same time. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to invite my son to participate. And it was like a pain, and we changed the heating element in a dryer, right? And I'm like, I'd rather just buy a new dryer. But we did this, ordered the part, all this stuff, caught ourselves opening up. But the time together was really valuable, almost more valuable than if we would have done something fun, quote unquote, fun together, just going to the skate park. And so I think for dads, it's not about the fishing or the skateboarding or the whatever. It's creating space to connect with your kid on kind of the normal day-to-day stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also add to that, it was really a big deal that my dad tried to show interest in things he wasn't interested in. So he's not a sports guy. He's like, I can't play basketball. I can't play defense. If somebody wants to do something, I either want to help them or get out of their way.
God,
That's just his personality. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Defense is my favorite thing. And so I remember there was this, and let me just explain. I was not a good athlete. Okay. I'm talking about like church league intramurals here. Okay. And he would take me across from the other side of Texas to go to these tournaments. And I remember once I was like, hey, Dad, did you see the game? He's like, yeah, that was really good when you put the ball off the backboard and then into the basket. I was like, yeah, Dad, it's a layup. Yeah, that was really good, son. Yeah, like he just didn't know anything about sports, but he's like, he just wanted to support me because I was interested in it.
Is your dad still around?
Yeah.
What's his name?
His name's David also.
David. Love it. So for you, what's something that maybe you were stuck in your ways on, and of being a dad for 23 years, you shifted? And I can find sometimes, especially with Christians, we can be stuck in our ways about things. But then through marriage and kids and life, you're like, all right, I can relent on this, or I can change my opinion on this. Was there anything for you that you can think of that you shifted? And as you think about it for a minute, I'll give you an example. I've been married 20 years. My oldest kid's 18. I'm dead set that having a dog is the stupidest thing on the planet. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make financial sense. It's just, we have one now, and I still would give it away tomorrow if the family didn't want it. But I shifted because I realized 6 people wanted it, 1 person didn't. And it was me holding back from something that mattered to them because Dad's stuck in his ways. And I was challenged that if I'm a growth-minded person, like, I don't need to make everything revolve around what makes most sense to me. So that's why we now have a dog, which I'm kind to and remember his name and feed him and whatnot. But is there anything in your world that you were stuck in your ways on and you made a shift?
Yeah, I think I'm more stubborn than that. Actually, the dog thing was one of them. Like, I think animals are great. I just think they should never come indoors and should never be named.
Eaten only?
Yeah, exactly. Or allowed to fend for themselves. So, same thing. And our dog died actually while we were in Europe. And so their mom called me and told me that what had happened. And it was all in the middle of the night for us when she was dealing with it. And so I had to sit and I knew that I needed to tell them separately because they would get mad at each other for how the other one related to the news.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the older one is just this like logic. He's like, okay, so what happened? And just like all these questions, like medical questions, just this need to understand. And I know that the more emotional one would have been like, why are you such a jerk? You know, and needed to cry a little bit being alone. And so we were there with another friend, and I said, hey, can you talk to one of them at a time, pull one of them aside and engage them in conversation so that I can speak to them one-on-one. And so they just needed such different things. And so I offered a lot of empathy even, and I was sad for them. And I was kind of sad. I mean, you come to love animals, right? So there was a sadness in myself, but it was nothing to compare to what they were going through. And so I just had to, my empathy was for what they were going through, not that I was sharing the same sadness.
Yeah. So what I hear that I think is really important for dads to hear is it's not necessarily a stuck in your ways thing, but I do find that dads and men can be like, this is how I respond to situations, right? You'd be like, oh, dad's always blunt or dad's always passive or whatever, right? Some men just show up to every situation the exact same way. Where if you pause and you spend your life knowing your kids, right? Like getting to know them, because I want to be known, you want to be known, like human beings, we want to be known. You knew your kids enough to show up for them in the way that they needed you to show up. And I don't think that that's like this, let me baby my child. That's not what was happening. It was, this matters to them. they matter to me. So I am going to show up in the way they need me to show up.
Yes. And that adaptability is, to me, one function of maturity. So if I think that I get to show up my way everywhere I go in my style, I can be who I am. I can be grounded in who I am,
Yeah.
and adapt how I interact with different people, right? Because I'm in different roles, I'm in different types of relationships, and people are different. So that ability to adapt is, to me, it's just one way of loving people well.
Two really good distinctions about being able to show up is one, maturity, which we all want to be mature men, and then loving well. Like, we want to love well. And so the adaptability is a great thing for us to key into, because we have the ability to do that. So why not lean in and learn that? What's something that you've learned about yourself through fatherhood? So what have you learned about David through being a father?
Yeah. So two things come to mind. First of all, I feel like I more deeply experience God's love for me because of how I feel about my kids. And so, like, my bonus kids that I met when they were already adults, it was startling to meet someone for the first time and instantly love them. Like this, what do you need from me? I want to be that for you kind of love when you first meet them. So that was startling, because I never experienced that before. Every other relationship, like, I felt that about their mom. Like, I was into her minute one, but that's different. Like, there's a certain selfishness in that, right? This kind of unselfish, I love and care about you unconditionally, that had always grown as relationships grew, right? Or with my kids, like, while they're in utero, I'm like, oh, there's this child coming that I'm imagining all these things for. But to meet an adult and instantly have this intense love, that was a first time kind of experience for me.
That's really interesting. What elements do you believe had to be in place for that to be true? Meaning, now I get what you're saying. You're giving this example because it helps you better understand God's love for you, God's love for mankind. But in thinking about how our world is, right? Like, there are many men who are divorced, who are gonna be an adoptive, or not adoptive, but like be a stepdad, whatever. So for you, David, what elements had to be true in your life for you to be present and feel this way about them? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So I think the answer lies in what a father is supposed to do and feel and say. So having experienced all these positive things from my own father, as imperfect as he was, this is what a father does. And so, even before I met their mom, and I imagined someday being, at a certain point, came to imagine being a stepfather, I sort of started imagining what would it be like to be a stepfather, and how could I be a great one, and how could I give them what they need. And so all the same feelings of fulfillment that I get from the two I've known their whole lives was, well, that's what I hope to feel and transfer and show if I have the opportunity to be a stepfather.
So as you say that, would you agree that your starting to connect with them was less about if they liked you and more about what you could do to be a support to them?
Yes. And the other thing is, part of this is because they're adults, and part of it is because I'm new, is it's all on their terms.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can't come into that with expectations. And they have different personalities, they have different needs, and they're just, I have three of them, and we just relate very, very differently. The difference is, because I haven't been in their life as long, they're not quick to see me as a trusted advisor. Okay, that doesn't come quickly.
Right.
Okay, you're pretty cool, I guess, or you're at least not lame, or at least not lame is kind of the first goal, I guess.
Yeah.
But and it's a little easier with my daughter because she's like, hey, my car won't start, or
there's
whatever.
more opportunity to step in and help.
Exactly. Whereas with the boys, they're, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's more about like, hey, what can we, do you want to watch football together, or do you want to, and so, and then one talks more, one talks less, and just let them be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here for you. And I'll pursue you a little bit. So, that I want this relationship. Again, it's on your own terms.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I'm wondering, like, as men are listening to this and maybe struggling with relationship with their, stepchildren that are middle school, high school age, I think some of those same things can apply, right? The on your terms, pursue them a little bit. I think, and I just got to say this to every dad, pursue your kids, pursue your stepkids, pursue them, and be aware if it's too much, but just don't ever go to, I'm just going to wait for them to reach out to me because I pissed them off 5 years ago. Like, dude, you have to do something to just pursue, like the heart of a child, just like me. Like, I want to be pursued. Your kids want to be pursued. Any thoughts on that before I go to my next couple questions for you?
Yeah, totally. And I think with stepkids, it's, hey, we've got the next 50 years. So we don't need this super close, super tight, let me brag about this relationship today. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And so there's just no rush in it.
Yeah, that's good. Really good. All right. This podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes. I mean, it's beautiful. You're sharing your field notes with us. The mantra is rebel and create. This idea of, like, as men, we want to rebel against something, but not just to tear it down, to create something beautiful in its place. When you hear the words rebel and create, what's something that you are rebelling against, and what do you hope to create in its place?
Yeah, I think I'm rebelling against this idea that a man needs to prove his emotional independence. Like it's my job as a man to show that I don't need anybody or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I'm an island. And this isn't anything special about me. My dad's a very emotional guy, and he never told me that I shouldn't cry ever. In fact, sometimes I was like, Dad, you cry too much. I didn't say it, but I thought it. And so this idea that we're so insecure that we have to prove I'm a hard man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, it's actually the tenderness that shows, like, great power with great tenderness is, to me, the mark of masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, if I can tell one more story about my dad.
Please.
At one time, I remember I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and he was very upset with himself, which happened a lot. He was very upset with himself, and he was telling my mom and me, and I was like, what's going on, Dad? What's going on? He said, I realized today, when I'm using the weed eater, it's risky. You could a piece of glass could hit somebody, a piece of grass could hit somebody in the eye, or you could actually throw a rock. And so when people are walking by on the sidewalk, I stop and I wait. And I was like, yeah, I've seen you do that. And he goes, I realized that I give a wider safety margin to white people than I do to minorities. And I'm so angry at myself that I am treating people without equality. And I thought, oh, I'm so sorry. I was thinking, I don't want you to feel that way about yourself. You're a good person. You do treat everybody as equals. But it was him sharing that he felt that badly about himself. That shaped me more in my view of race issues than if he had said, hey, David, you need to be sure to treat all people equally, no matter the color of their skin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You see how that vulnerability was completely transformational. So it was in that he was the opposite of proving what a hard man he was. That was what was the most transformational for me.
Is and him being vulnerable, letting you see it.
Yeah. Yeah, letting me
Yes.
into that rather than just
Yes.
suffering in silence.
Yes. That's so good. Something else you said that really stuck out to me in the notes that you sent over to me is you talked about the stern, and these two words, they hit me hard, and I don't know why, but you're rebelling against the unpleasable father. And
Yeah.
and it goes in line with what you're saying right now, right? That you don't want to be so hard and so emotionally, stern, that you're never your family can't please you because you're trying, like, whatever. But why'd you say that, or what does it mean? And I just think so many of us are trying to lead our families well, that it's like my son cleans the backyard and I'm like, hey, cool, but you missed this. Or your kid comes home with a B and you're like, hey, great. What could you have done to get an A? And so these things where we think we're leading our kids to success, but maybe not.
Yeah. So the stern and unpleasable father describes me in many ways. When my kids were young, and my kids have shared that with me. Like, I did this, but it wasn't good enough. I did that, but it wasn't good enough. And my personality is, oh, it could be even better.
Yeah.
Which I mean, as you did great, but you could do even better. You could even level up more. But what they heard that as is it's not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly in that 6-week personal fitness challenge that my son was doing, he felt that it was never quite good enough, and that if he didn't do it, that he would fall out of my favor. And so that stern and unpleasable father, which leads to a perception that God is stern and unpleasable.
It's tough because you want the best. Like our approach is, I'm coaching you. I want the best for you, my intentions, but it's coming across as like, man, dad always says good job. And also here's how you could grow, but that's not what they're hearing.
Yeah. So I heard this, somebody said that if you have kids who play sports, you need to learn these few words. And if you just say these 5 words over and over and over again, that's all you need to say to your kids about sports. And these are the 5 words. I love to watch you play. I guess that's 6 words. I love to watch you play. But did you see when I messed this up? I love to watch you play. Did you see I got 38 points? I love to watch you play. Did you see what that guy did to me where he fouled me and the ref didn't see it? I love to watch you play.
So not only are you not doing the coaching side of like, oh yeah, the 38 points was awesome. Bummer you missed that free throw. So that's one side of it. The other side is you're not making their identity about, wow, dude, you made 38 and you made 40 last time. You're not making their identity about the sport that may not be there forever.
Yeah. And to if you're going to praise something, praise the hard work, not the results.
Yeah. Gosh, dang it. That's so hard.
Yeah. Because, I have one kid who, he's going to work his butt off and he's going to be a pretty fit 220 pound dude. And I have another one that I met when he was an adult. And if he put in half the effort, he looks like a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like, what matters is that they're doing the work. They're living a healthy lifestyle, or in whatever it is, whatever area of life it is that they're doing the work, not the results.
Yeah. Yeah. David, I got 2 last questions for you and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. You are on the horizon. Okay. The horizon is that David's going to be a grandfather in the next 5 to 10 years, most likely. Okay. What type of grandfather do you want to be?
Yeah. I want to be, well, what I want to be is the fun one.
Of course.
Right. So I want to be like, oh, I'm with grandpa. It's going to be fun. It's going to be an adventure. It's going to be a blast. And I want to be that additional voice that says things that maybe when their parents say it, it goes in one ear and out the other. Oh, but grandpa said it. Okay. Maybe it's true. Because I was shaped by my grandfather. One grandfather died before I was born, but the other one just a handful of conversations, and his view of right and wrong and what he was most proud of was influential on me. And so just to have that kind of influence on grandkids is a hope.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, this last question is a legacy question. What legacy do you hope to leave? And the way I'll ask the question, you can answer however you want, is imagine 25 years from today, you're standing in a cul-de-sac, peering into the homes of your 5 kids. They're all about your age now, right? They're all right around that 46, 47, 48. If you're peering into their homes, what do you hope to see that puts a big smile on your face, a tear in your eye, and you're like, I showed up? What is it you'd like to see there?
They're all sitting down together for dinner. Their whole family sitting down together for dinner on a weeknight.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why
it's not a
weeknight?
special occasion. It's not a special occasion Sunday afternoon. This is what we do in the evening is we gather together around a table and we share about our day.
That's good.
And they've developed the questions to get their kids to talk and process what's going on in their hearts.
Beautiful. David, thank you so much for our time to get today to get to know you more on an intimate level around fatherhood, hearing about your father. Dude, I love the way that you're showing up to life, and thank you for being vulnerable on this call and sharing bits and pieces of your story that would help me connect with you, help me grow as a husband and father, and then also for all the men listening to step into who they were made to be. And I mean, just so many nuggets. Thank you for the man you are. And I just look forward to continuing to get to know you over the years.
All right. Thanks, brother. Thanks for having me. Great pleasure getting to know you these past few years.
All right. Until next time. Peace.
Bye-bye.
So don't hang up yet. What an incredible conversation. I mean, really, I'm leaving this conversation feeling like I just got mentored by a sage for the last hour. I mean, the nuggets about, I love watching you play, right? Not tying my kid's identity to the results, but tying it to their hard work. I mean, such gold. Digging into the consequences. Man, so many things. As I look at my notes, really, this overwhelming concept of I have these moments, and David shared several of these, but these moments to reveal to my kids the love of God. I mean, the story of walking with his kid half a mile one way, walking half a mile the other way. Like, what a beautiful moment. And you and I are going to have those opportunities, lots of them, to be able to show up and reveal the Heavenly Father, God, to our kids. So incredible. My friends, if these podcasts are helping you on your journey, I need you to do 2 things. 1, write a review. Please, it just takes a minute. Write a review. And then 2, send it to a friend and say, hey, like if somebody sent me a text, hey, Ned, I see you are such a great dad to your kids. I listened to this podcast and I thought you might enjoy it. I mean, to be noticed and recognized is huge. So where are you and I getting noticed and recognized? Nobody's saying, hey, great job as a dad. We have to do that for each other. All right. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact. And let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.